The fluorescent lights of the Joint Services Logistics Annex, Section J6, hummed with the oppressive monotony of bureaucracy. A sound Sergeant Miles Huntington, Logistics NCOIC, took as validation of his own small kingdom. He leaned back in his government-issue chair, the worn leather squeaking in protest, observing the spectacle before him. Corporal Anya Montgomery, whose official duty jacket was suspiciously clean for a supply clerk, and whose hands were suspiciously rough for a janitor, standing rigid, holding a chipped requisition form and a brightly yellow mop. "I told you, CPL Montgomery," Huntington enunciated, drawing out the syllables with deliberate superiority. "Form DD 1155, paragraph C, subsection 4, clearly states that heavy industrial detergent, class Alpha 7, is reserved for hazardous material containment breaches only. This isn't a hazmat breach. This is apparently just Tuesday." "No," he gestured dismissively toward her requisition form with a newly acquired, highly polished titanium pen that had clearly never seen a hostile environment. "And frankly, Corporal, your current rank and station do not justify the allocation of resources designated for strategic priority assets. Go back to your standard-issue floor cleaner, the kind meant for the general-purpose latrine floors." Montgomery didn't flinch. Her eyes, usually obscured by the shadow of her cap, were steady, holding a depth of fatigue that went far beyond mere lack of sleep. "Sergeant, I've explained. The SKIF 4 sublevel requires a neutral pH, non-volatile cleaner. The standard floor cleaner you issue leaves a residue that disrupts the environmental sensor arrays. It affects the acoustic baffling systems. If those systems fail, the entire annex is flagged for compromise. I'm requesting the specified solvent to maintain operational integrity, not for my personal amusement." Huntington chuckled, a dry, rasping sound that signaled the escalation of his petty tyranny. "Operational integrity? Corporal, you push a mop. Operational integrity is my concern, handling $300 million in sensitive equipment. And speaking of operational integrity, you're listed as a supply specialist, MOS 92A, but you're pushing a mop bucket, and your file is flagged with a level 5 administrative freeze. That's unusual, Montgomery. You smell like ammonia and desperation, and yet the only way I can access your records is through a Tier 3 network override. That doesn't match the stripes on your sleeve, which, by the way, are crooked." Montgomery tightened her grip on the mop handle, her knuckles white. She looked down, briefly, at the small, almost invisible piece of tarnished metal pinned discreetly beneath her name tape, a piece of metal that meant absolutely nothing to anyone outside a very specific and very small circle. "My assignment is my assignment, Sergeant. The material is needed now." "Needed?" Huntington sneered. He stood up, towering over her, crossing the sterile linoleum floor to inspect her uniform more closely. He focused on a subtle, almost faded stitched mark on the collar of her BDU blouse, a stitch pattern that resembled an obscure, jagged lightning bolt. "What is this? Unauthorized insignia? Did you pick up some random trinket overseas?" "Look, CPL, I'm running a tight ship here. This isn't the sandpit where you get to trade cigarettes for souvenirs. If you've got something to hide, or if you've been administratively repurposed due to disciplinary issues, you need to state it now, or I'm writing you up for insubordination and misuse of government property." He tapped her mop bucket. "That bucket is GFE, Corporal." Montgomery's history was not written in DD 214s, easily accessed by logistics sergeants. Her real story began 5 years prior, 7,000 miles east of this mundane supply room, where the air tasted of ancient dust and fear. She was initially deployed as Anya Petrova, a civilian linguist contracted to a Joint Special Operations Task Force, JSOTF, operating under the umbrella of NATO's stabilization forces in Afghanistan. Her job was innocuous, interpreting Pashto and managing low-level satellite communications, a SIGINT Ghost operating from a heavily fortified forward operating base, FOB Cruz, near the volatile Pakistani border. She wasn't a soldier, not yet. She was a systems analyst with an almost psychic understanding of encrypted frequencies and frequency-hopping protocols. Her world was the silent hum of server racks and the glow of 3 high-resolution monitors displaying scrolling lines of intercepted metadata. Her call sign was Vector, due to her uncanny ability to plot enemy vectors purely from radio traffic anomalies. The turning point, the reason for the administrative lock, the mop, and the almost invisible medal, occurred during the catastrophic failure of Operation Obsidian Curtain. It was a joint interdiction mission involving elements of U.S. Delta Force and their Polish counterparts, the Jednostka Wojskowa Komandosów, JWK, Polish Special Operations. The objective was a high-value target, HVT, responsible for coordinating IED placement across 3 provinces. Vector was meant to remain strictly in the secure communications bunker, but the situation deteriorated rapidly. The ground teams were ambushed in the Hindu Kush foothills. Their primary communication relay, a highly specialized directional antenna array, was hit by mortar fire. The entire JSOTF faced a communications blackout, meaning immediate casualty notification and extraction were impossible. In the ensuing chaos, Major General Kazimierz Nowak, the JWK contingent commander, realized the only way to re-establish the link was to manually carry a replacement frequency key to the secondary relay station, 1.5 kilometers away, through terrain already swarming with enemy fighters. It was a suicide run. Every available combat soldier was pinned down, providing suppression. Vector, then a 22-year-old contractor, looked at the frantic, blood-splattered Major General. She understood the topography and the frequency modulation better than anyone. She volunteered, not as a fighter, but as a courier of critical data. I know the dead zones, General. I can move without generating significant thermal signatures on the perimeter. Major General Nowak, seeing the unwavering focus in her eyes, didn't argue. He stripped her of her contractor vest, replacing it with a light, non-standard issue armor carrier plate from a fallen JWK soldier. It was too big, but it offered protection. He gave her a compact Heckler & Koch MP7, not for fighting, but for defense, and the replacement key, encrypted onto a hardened digital storage module. If you reach the relay vector, you transmit this code first. It means Eagle is home. It's a fail-safe to authenticate the entire link. Only 4 people know it. The one. 5 kilometers felt like a geological epoch. She ran, not like a soldier burdened by 70 pounds of kit, but like a ghost, relying on her knowledge of the terrain's dead spots and the specific operational security procedures of the enemy forces. She moved low, hugging the shadow lines, the lightweight MP7 feeling like a foreign object in her hands, trained only for keyboards. She reached the secondary relay site, only to find it already compromised. 2 dead Polish operators lay near the console, their sacrifice buying precious seconds. The enemy had rigged the communications hub for destruction, but the timer hadn't armed yet. Under fire, she remembers the sound of the rounds impacting the concrete housing, the smell of burning ordnance. She managed to key in the frequency key. The final, critical action was hitting the confirmation sequence. As she pressed the final button, a burst of AK-47 fire ripped into her left shoulder plate, spinning her violently against the console. The impact was concussive, shattering 2 ribs and collapsing a lung, but the signal went out. The Eagle is home code authenticated the entire network. That single transmission saved the pinned-down Delta and JWK teams. It allowed overhead air support, KAS, to be vectored precisely onto the encroaching enemy positions, turning a catastrophic rout into a successful extraction and counterattack. She was evacuated 3 hours later, nearly bled out, the Polish armor carrier saturated with her own blood. She spent 6 weeks in Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. When she was finally well enough to stand, Major General Nowak was waiting, dressed immaculately, holding a small, elegant box. She was no longer Anya Petrova, contractor. She had voluntarily put herself under fire and delivered mission-critical data a feat of bravery and skill that transcended rank and nationality. Nowak pinned the medal onto her hospital gown. It was the Krzyż Walecznych, the Polish Cross of Valor. It is not an award given lightly, reserved for acts of exceptional courage displayed on the field of battle. For a foreign civilian to receive it was almost unheard of, a testament to the severity of the action. The U.S. Army, recognizing her extraordinary service, granted her a direct commission conversion into the ranks, giving her the humble initial rank of corporal, but keeping her role hyper-classified, placing her under the ambiguous umbrella of administrative repurposing, effectively shielding her from unnecessary scrutiny until her service obligations were fully met. She was placed on a quiet cycle, where her true capabilities were masked by the most mundane of assignments, janitorial duties in the J6 Annex, a critical infrastructure point where silence and observation were more valuable than combat experience. She wasn't scrubbing floors. She was the ghost in the machine, ensuring physical security and monitoring personnel. The mop was her camouflage. The jagged lightning bolt on her collar was not unauthorized insignia. It was the subtle, specific unit flash of the JWK operator whose plate carrier had saved her life. Back in the J6 Annex, Sergeant Huntington's voice cut through the memory like a dull knife. "I don't care about your acoustic baffling systems, Montgomery. I care about regulations. And regulation says, this level Alpha 7 cleaner is off limits. You're low rank, you're low visibility, and you're wasting my time. Now hand me your common access card. I'm running a full personnel audit right here, right now. I want to know why your records jump from contracted civilian to CPL administration highly restricted access with no intervening documentation. This stinks of fraud, waste, and abuse." Montgomery hesitated. Showing the CAC would escalate the confrontation immediately. Her profile was so restrictive, it was designed to cause an immediate network alert if accessed by a non-designated security clearance level. "Sergeant, I advise against running that scan here. It will trigger a protocol alarm." "You advise." Huntington laughed, loud and booming in the echoing hall. "The janitor advises the NCOIC of logistics. Give me the card, Corporal, or I will have you forcibly escorted to the Provost Marshal's office." He thrust his hand out. Montgomery placed her government-issued CAC card onto the biometric scanner pad on Huntington's desk. The effect was instantaneous and highly disruptive. The scanner, meant for low-level identification checks, immediately flashed deep crimson. The tone wasn't the standard access denied buzzer. It was a high-pitched, oscillating electronic shriek that signaled a system override of the highest priority. A synthesized, emotionless voice boomed through the logistics area speakers. "Warning, unauthorized attempted access of Tier 0. Code word, protected asset file. All sector doors automatically locked. Initiating blackout protocol. Immediate cease and desist required. Identity of asset, Vector 81. Huntington froze, his face draining of color. The entire room went silent save for the relentless security shriek. Tier 0 access was usually reserved for White House communications or nuclear command protocols. Huntington, in his arrogance, had just locked down the entire multi-million-dollar logistics hub. Before Huntington could stammer out an apology or even move to press the panic button, a shadow fell across the room, dense and absolute. The security door to the high-value arms vault, the only door that remained open during the lockdown, slid back, revealing a figure that defined the word operator. He was tall, built of taut wire and practiced lethality. He wore no rank insignia visible on his field gear, only the faint outline of where a Master Chief Petty Officer rating badge would sit, worn smooth by heavy vests. His primary weapon was slung across his chest, the black silhouette of an HK-416, clearly customized, fitted with a high-end Nightforce scope and a proprietary sound suppressor, a weapon worth more than Huntington's annual salary. His name, known only by the select few who shared his deployment rotation, was Master Chief Marcus Cale, call sign Ghost. Devgru, recently returned from an 18-month non-official rotation. Kyle walked in with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who measured every footfall in potential threats. He ignored the shrieking alarm and ignored Sergeant Huntington entirely. His gaze landed on Corporal Montgomery. He saw not the janitor, but the stance. The slight, almost imperceptible tremor in her right hand as she held the mop handle, the tension of a person ready for impact, not ready to scrub a floor. He saw the faint, faded lightning bolt insignia on her collar. Most importantly, he saw the small, tarnished Cross of Valor pin, nestled barely visible against the rough fabric of her blouse. Kyle stopped directly in front of Montgomery. He still hadn't acknowledged Huntington, who was now sweating profusely, trying desperately to hit the override on the blaring alarm. Kyle's voice was a low, resonant baritone, cutting through the electronic noise with absolute authority. Vector 81, Kyle stated, using the designation the security system had blared. Confirm the code. Operation Obsidian Curtain. Final transmission sequence. Date of action, August 14th. Montgomery dropped her chin slightly. The moment of truth, the moment of stepping back into the light she had deliberately avoided, had arrived. She didn't have to think. The code was burned into her frontal lobe. She spoke the phrase, a precise mix of Polish and English military jargon that referred to the specific frequency and encryption key she had used to re-establish communications. Orzo jest w domu. Eagle is home. Sierra Golf Foxtrot. Key 729 Omega. Kyle nodded once, a movement almost too slight to register. It was the correct code, the operational confirmation sequence known only by the four most senior commanders of that JSOTF and Vector 81. He pulled a hardened, classified secure communications tablet, ComTab, from a pouch on his vest and accessed the restricted network. His clearance being Tier 1 instantly overrode the lockdown protocol. The flashing red light softened to a steady green, and the piercing alarm ceased. Silence crashed back into the room, heavy and absolute, broken only by Huntington's ragged breathing. Kyle looked at the screen, then back at Montgomery. His expression was professionally neutral, yet his eyes held a profound depth of respect. He didn't read her basic file. He read the citations. Corporal Anya Montgomery, formerly Anya Petrova, civilian contractor converted, now active duty U.S. Army. Commendations include the Bronze Star with V device, awarded for exemplary service under direct enemy fire, stabilizing command and control functions after primary comms array failure. Huntington swallowed hard. A Bronze Star with Valor was serious, but Kyle continued, his voice taking on a reverence rarely heard in a supply depot. The Purple Heart, for wounds sustained on the field of combat. The Joint Service Commendation Medal, for exceptional multinational liaison performance under highly sensitive deployment. Kyle paused, his finger tracing the final, most important entry on the screen. He lifted his head, focusing on the small, tarnished pin on her collar, confirming the visual with the classified data entry. And, most notably, the Krzyż Waleczny, the Cross of Valor, Republic of Poland, awarded by Major General Kazimierz Nowak, commander of JWK. Citation reads, for an act of supreme sacrifice and valor performed beyond the call of mortal duty, navigating contested terrain under intense fire to deliver the essential frequency key that saved 2 multinational direct action units from annihilation. Her selfless act demonstrated courage, commensurate with the highest traditions of the Polish military, a debt owed in blood and honor. Kyle lowered the tablet, his eyes meeting Montgomery's. Huntington was rigid, frozen behind the desk, his titanium pen now seeming ridiculously small. He understood the gravity now. He hadn't been insulting a janitor. He had been insulting a genuine documented hero whose service records were likely managed by the Pentagon's most secure office. Kyle then performed the ultimate, silent gesture of respect in the Special Operations community. He slowly unslung his HK-416, the weapon of his trade, his life, his identity. It was meticulously maintained, the serial number faintly visible on the receiver. He held the weapon out, muzzle down, toward Corporal Montgomery. "Corporal," Kyle said, his voice quiet, stripped of all tactical edge. "The warrior's cross demands the warrior's respect. Hold this for me, just for a moment." Montgomery, trained rigorously on weapon handling, even during her quiet cycle, accepted the heavy, expensive rifle instantly. Her hands, rough from gripping the mop handle, settled naturally onto the textured foregrip and the pistol grip. The rifle felt heavy and familiar, a weight of responsibility she hadn't carried in years. Just as the metal of the HK-416 transferred the cold from Cale's hands to hers, the main access door to the J6 annex slid open. The security alert had done its job, drawing rapid response, but not from the local MP unit. First through the door was Colonel Robert Bull Thorne, commander of the 3rd Special Forces Group, a man whose reputation was built on successful long-range surveillance and direct action operations. Behind him was Major Liam O'Connell, the British SAS liaison officer, identifiable by the unique pattern of his camouflaged uniform and the austere focus in his eyes. And finally, flanked by a 2-man security detail, was a man in the Polish military uniform, a general officer, adorned with ribbons that spoke of decades of high command. Major General Kazimierz Nowak himself, the very man who had awarded Montgomery the Krzyż Walecznych years ago. The generals were here for a high-level briefing on sensitive arms transfers, having been triggered by the Tier 0 network alarm. They walked in fast, expecting an active shooter or a high-level espionage breach. They stopped dead. They saw Master Chief Kyle Devgru standing in the center of the logistics room. They saw the despised logistics NCO, Sergeant Huntington, paralyzed with fear. And they saw Corporal Anya Montgomery, the janitor, standing quietly, holding Cale's $50,000 HK-416 with the practiced ease of a trained professional, the faint, tarnished Polish cross gleaming on her breast. Colonel Thorne took in the scene, the HK-416, the cross of valor, Cale's posture. In a single split second of recognition, he immediately snapped to attention, his back rigid. Major O'Connell, equally trained to read a room in an instant, registered the significance of the Devgru Master Chief's profound gesture. He followed suit, standing at parade rest, then moving into the sharp official salute. Major General Nowak, seeing his former charge, the young woman who saved his men and who bore the Polish honor, straightened his spine. His expression, usually stern, softened with paternal pride. Master Chief Kyle, having given the highest personal salute by presenting his weapon, now completed the physical motion. He raised his hand in a slow, perfect, silent salute to Corporal Montgomery. 4 brass hats, Colonel 06, Major 04, Master Chief Petty Officer E9, and Major General 08, stood locked in simultaneous, profound respect, saluting a Corporal E4 whose primary function, according to the records, was sweeping floors. The silence was the loudest sound in the Western Hemisphere. Sergeant Huntington, witnessing the unprecedented scene, a multinational, multi-service salute directed at the woman he had just belittled, didn't just collapse emotionally. His career evaporated in that instant. He didn't move, afraid that any twitch would draw the attention of the 4 men, who now knew the depth of his incompetence. Montgomery held the salute, the rifle heavy and solid in her grip. She returned the gesture, not with the lazy, low-ranking disrespect Huntington often saw, but with the precise, practiced snap of a warrior acknowledging their peers. She lowered her hand, holding Cale's eyes for a moment. Then she shifted the HK-416, presenting it back to him, butt first, receiver up. Kyle took the rifle, slinging it back across his chest with a gentle, appreciative nod. General Thorne, having maintained the salute until Montgomery herself broke it, turned slowly, fixing Huntington with an icy, surgical glare that promised immediate and total annihilation. "Sergeant Huntington," Thorne's voice was dangerously low, a growl of repressed fury. "You just caused a Tier 0 security breach and insulted a highly decorated combat operative assigned to a critical oversight position. You denied her essential equipment. By refusing to comply with a direct requirement for the preservation of classified assets, you have demonstrated a critical failure of competence and judgment. He didn't need to say more. Huntington was finished. General Nowak stepped forward, addressing Montgomery in crisp, perfect English, bypassing the stunned Huntington entirely. Vector, it is good to see you well. Your assignment, I understand, is for the maintenance of operational integrity. Montgomery stood at attention. Sir, yes, sir. The CIF-4 requires the specified solvent, and you were denied it, Thorne interjected, shaking his head. He looked down at the box of cheap, general-purpose cleaning fluid Huntington had offered. Major O'Connell, I believe we have a requisition in our secure storage for Alpha-7 detergent for the sensitive materials handling room. Divert that supply immediately to Corporal Montgomery. Secure 3 gallons. Top priority. Immediately, Colonel, O'Connell replied, already moving to initiate the transfer. Montgomery nodded her thanks to Thorne and O'Connell. She turned back to her mop bucket, retrieving the requisition slip Huntington had crumpled and tossed aside. She flattened it against the desk. Huntington finally managed to find his voice, a pathetic squeak. Corporal Montgomery, I deeply apologize. I didn't know. Montgomery looked at him, not with anger, but with vast, endless pity. She didn't respond to his apology. She didn't need to. Her validation had just arrived in the form of 4 senior officers and the temporary loan of a sacred weapon. She took the freshly approved requisition form, placed it carefully in her jacket pocket, and then, with a professional grace that belied her rank, she picked up her yellow mop. She gave a final, silent nod of acknowledgement to Master Chief Kyle, who returned a slight, respectful bow of the head. As Montgomery walked out of the J6 annex, her mop bucket rattling softly, heading back toward the silence and sensitivity of the SKF-4 sublevel, the 4 senior officers stood rigid, watching her leave. Major General Nowak turned to Colonel Thorne, speaking softly. She is a testament to the old code, Robert. Courage, honor, duty. We are fortunate to have her watching our backs. Corporal Montgomery disappeared down the long, anonymous corridor. The janitor, who was also a ghost, the lowest rank, who commanded the highest respect, returning to her duty, her mop, the ultimate camouflage for a soldier who had already earned her stripes in blood, far away from the petty tyrannies of the supply room. If you believe respect is earned by blood and not by rank, type respect in the comments.